She's with me. The millionaire single dad said coldly, leaving everyone frozen at the gala. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories every week. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Today's story is titled, She's With Me. The millionaire single dad said coldly, leaving everyone frozen at the gala. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had not stopped for hours. It whispered against the marble stones of Westvale Memorial Park, a quiet cemetery on the edge of the city. Between rows of white crosses, a young woman in a faded gray coat knelt beside a grave, her hands red from the cold. Her name was Evelyn Hart, the caretaker who made sure no grave went forgotten. She replaced wilted flowers, brushed away fallen leaves, and spoke softly to the names carved in stone, as if they could still hear her. A black car stopped by the gate. From it stepped Lucas Grant, a man whose face had been on every business magazine in the country, the CEO of Grant Industries, a widower, a single father. He stood silently in the drizzle, holding a bouquet of white daisies. His dark suit was perfect, his expression unreadable. When he approached the grave, Evelyn looked up, startled. Their eyes met his sharp and cold, hers tired but kind. "Are you here for Mrs. Grant?" she asked gently. "I just changed her flowers this morning." Lucas blinked, a little thrown off. You knew her?" Evelyn shook her head. "No, I just take care of the ones who no longer have someone to visit." For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "You are not afraid, working here alone?" She gave a small smile. "No, sir. I am more afraid of people who forget the living." The wind lifted her hair. For the first time in months, Lucas felt something stir in his chest, a faint warmth that was not from the weather. He watched as she placed the last flower in the vase and whispered, "Rest well." A few days later, they met again by accident, this time not among gravestones, but at a grand charity gala downtown. Evelyn had been hired to arrange flowers for the event. The hall glittered with chandeliers and champagne glasses. Lucas stood near the stage, surrounded by reporters, every flash of camera reflecting his perfect image of control. When he saw her across the room, his breath caught. The same quiet woman from the cemetery, now holding a tray of white roses, out of place among the silk and diamonds. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Miss Hart," he said, "what are you doing here?" "Working," she replied simply. "Same as everyone else, I suppose." There was something grounding in her honesty, something he could not explain. The board had been pressuring him for weeks to appear less cold, to attend the gala with a date, but he had refused until this very moment. He looked at her, then at the crowd whispering nearby, and said the words that would change both their lives. "Come with me," he said. "Be my fiancé just for tonight." Evelyn froze. "Excuse me?" "Not for love," he added quickly, "for convenience. Think of it as a contract." Her fingers tightened around the roses. The room suddenly felt too bright, too loud. She stared at the man every headline called untouchable, and for the first time she saw not power, but loneliness hidden behind his calm eyes. A deal between a billionaire and a graveyard caretaker, two strangers bound by silence and loss. Neither knew that one night would lead to something neither contract nor reason could define. The next morning, Evelyn could still hear his voice echoing in her head. "Be my fiancé just for tonight." It sounded absurd, almost like a dream she had no right to remember. But the image of his face, calm, unreadable, hiding something behind that wall of composure, stayed with her through the day. She returned to Westvale Memorial Park before sunrise. The fog clung low to the ground, wrapping the gravestones in silver mist. Evelyn worked quietly, wiping marble, trimming overgrown grass. Her hands were steady, but her mind was not. By mid-morning, a black car rolled up the narrow path again. Her heart skipped. The door opened, and there he was, Lucas Grant, in a dark overcoat, looking impossibly out of place among the dead. He stopped a few steps away. "You left before I could explain," he said softly. "There was nothing to explain," she replied. "You needed a convenient partner. I am just the caretaker. You will find someone more suitable." Lucas exhaled. "Miss Hart, please listen. I am not asking you to play pretend out of vanity. My company is facing a critical merger. Investors want stability, a family image. The board has been pressuring me to remarry, or at least appear as if I have moved on. Evelyn looked up from the flowers she was arranging. And you thought pretending with a woman from a cemetery would make you look stable? He hesitated, then smiled faintly, almost self-mockingly. No one would suspect me of lying if the person beside me has nothing to gain. She stared at him, unsure whether to be offended or impressed. You are serious. I am, he said simply. 2 weeks. Attend 3 public events with me. Then it ends. I will ensure your father's medical bills are covered and fund the memorial garden you have been planning. That is all. Her breath caught. How do you know about that? I asked around, he admitted. You submitted a proposal to the city council last year, the Memory Garden project. They rejected it for lack of funding. The air between them thickened. Evelyn's fingers brushed the petals of a tiny blue flower beside her, the forget-me-not, the same one she had placed near his wife's grave. Money cannot buy peace, Mr. Grant, she said quietly, and I am not for sale. I am not trying to buy you, he replied. I am asking for your time. I need someone real in a world full of cameras. I need silence, not spectacle. You have that. The honesty in his voice disarmed her more than any charm could. He was not pleading, not manipulating, just telling the truth the way only a tired man could. She looked toward the rows of graves, then back at him. If I agree, she said slowly, what happens when people ask who I am? You will be my fiancé, he answered. Nothing more, nothing less. And when the 2 weeks are over, I will disappear from your life. You will have your garden. Your father will have his care. We both get what we need. Evelyn bit her lip, torn between pride and desperation. Her father's condition had worsened. The hospital had already sent another reminder about unpaid bills. She could not afford even a month's delay. But the thought of standing beside him, lying to the world, it felt wrong. Still, his eyes held a quiet sincerity she could not quite dismiss. Finally, she whispered, I will need to think about it. Lucas nodded once. Of course, but please do not take too long. The first event is next Friday. He handed her a card. It was simple, his name embossed in silver, the number written beneath. As he turned to leave, she called after him. Mr. Grant. He paused. Why me? He looked back, the fog curling around him like a veil. Because, Miss Hart, you are the only person I have met who treats the forgotten as if they still matter. That is exactly the kind of woman the world should see beside me. The car door shut. The sound faded down the hill, leaving her alone with the whisper of wind through the graves. Evelyn stood still for a long time, the card trembling in her hand, caught between the past she tended and the impossible future that had just knocked on her door. 3 days later, Evelyn found herself standing in front of a building so tall it seemed to slice through the clouds. The golden letters on the glass doors read Grant Industries headquarters. She clutched her small handbag as the security guard waved her inside. Her stomach tightened. Every step across the marble lobby echoed louder than her heartbeat. Lucas Grant was waiting for her upstairs, behind a desk that looked more like an altar than furniture. He rose when she entered. Miss Hart, he greeted, his voice calm, businesslike. You came. I said I would think about it, she replied, her hands twisting together. And I did. I will do it for the garden and my father's care. But I have conditions. Lucas's brows lifted slightly. Go on. First, she said, standing straighter, I will not pretend anything beyond what is necessary. Second, no lies about my past. If someone asks, I will tell them I work at the memorial park. Third, once the agreement ends, I want no public announcement or photographs of me used again. He listened without interruption, then nodded. Agreed. In return, you will attend 3 official functions as my fiancé, starting with the fundraising gala next week. You will also wear this. He opened a small velvet box. Inside lay a simple ring, elegant but understated. It is part of the image, he said. Evelyn hesitated before taking it. The metal was cool against her skin, strangely heavy. This looks expensive. It is insured, Lucas said, a hint of humor slipping through his usual restraint. So do not worry about breaking it. Her lips curved in a reluctant smile. I will try not to. He handed her a printed document. The contract outlines the terms we discussed. It is straightforward. No emotional obligations, no physical expectations. 2 weeks of appearances. After that, you will receive the funds for the memory garden and your father's treatment. Evelyn read the lines carefully, each sentence crisp and cold, like everything else in his world. She reached the final clause and paused. Clause 5, she read aloud. Neither party shall contact the other after the conclusion of the arrangement. Lucas met her eyes. Clean endings are best. Something in his tone made her chest tighten, but she said nothing. She signed her name at the bottom, her pen trembling slightly. When she looked up, he was already signing his. "Welcome to the contract, Miss Hart," he said, offering his hand. "Please," she replied softly. "Call me Evelyn. It feels strange being a fiancée without a first name." For the first time, his expression cracked. "Evelyn," he repeated quietly, as if testing the sound. A knock at the door broke the silence. A woman in a navy suit entered carrying a folder. "Mr. Grant, this is Miss Patel, our image consultant," Lucas explained. "She will help prepare you for the events." Miss Patel smiled warmly. "Do not worry, Miss Hart. We will not turn you into someone else, only a polished version of yourself." The next few hours passed in a blur. Evelyn was measured for dresses, given lessons on posture, small talk, and the endless etiquette of the elite. She stumbled through each exercise, earning polite smiles and gentle corrections. When she finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back still herself, but framed in grace she had never thought she possessed. As she left the office, Lucas walked her to the elevator. "I will have a driver pick you up Friday evening," he said. Evelyn nodded, slipping the contract copy into her bag. Understood. The elevator doors closed between them, and for a moment she saw his reflection on the steel surface, tall, controlled, distant. When she returned home that night, her father was asleep in his chair. She placed the ring box on the table beside his medication and whispered, "It is only for 2 weeks, Dad. Just 2 weeks." But even as she said it, a small part of her knew that no contract ever stayed just words on paper. At the top of the city, in his office of glass and gold, Lucas stood by the window, staring into the lights below. He turned the signed contract over in his hand, reading her name again and again. "Evelyn Hart," he murmured. "The woman who talks to the dead might be the only one who can make me feel alive." Outside, the rain began to fall once more, tapping gently against the glass-like fate, knocking, patient and persistent. Friday evening arrived with a drizzle that shimmered against the city lights. Evelyn stood in front of her small mirror, smoothing the fabric of the emerald green dress that Miss Patel had chosen for her. It was elegant, modest, and far from what she would have picked for herself. The ring glinted softly on her finger, catching the faint light from the window. She took a deep breath. A sleek black car waited outside her apartment building. When the driver opened the door, she stepped in, clutching her small clutch purse as if it were a shield. The city blurred past in streaks of gold and silver until they reached the entrance of the Grand Regency Hotel. Red carpet, chandeliers, photographers, the world she had only ever seen in magazines. Lucas was waiting at the entrance, impeccable in his tailored suit. When their eyes met, he gave a slight nod, the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. He offered his arm. "Ready, Miss Hart?" "It is Evelyn," she corrected softly. He inclined his head. "Right, Evelyn." As they stepped onto the red carpet, flashes erupted like lightning. The cameras loved him, and now they loved her too. Reporters whispered as they passed. "Who is she? Where did she come from?" Lucas's hand rested lightly over hers, firm but reassuring. Inside the ballroom, the air was thick with perfume and polished laughter. Evelyn followed his lead, greeting strangers whose smiles never reached their eyes. Miss Patel's training echoed in her head. Smile gently. Nod once. Never reveal too much. At one point, a tall woman in a glittering gown approached them. "Lucas," she purred, "I did not know you had moved on so quickly. And who is this lovely creature?" Lucas's voice remained calm. "This is Evelyn, my fiancée." The woman's painted lips curved in a sharp smile. "A fiancé? My, that was fast. And what do you do, dear?" Evelyn's chest tightened, but she met the woman's gaze steadily. "I take care of people who can no longer take care of themselves," she said, at Westvale Memorial Park. A few guests nearby exchanged surprised looks. The woman's eyebrows lifted, her smirk faltering for a second. "How poetic!" Evelyn simply smiled and turned away. Lucas's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Well handled," he murmured. Hours passed in a blur of music and conversation. Evelyn tried to focus on breathing, on the rhythm of the evening. Lucas remained composed, but she noticed the way he subtly avoided certain people, the way his jaw tightened whenever his father's name came up. There was more to his world than glamour and money, something fractured beneath the surface. When the orchestra began to play a slow waltz, Lucas turned to her. "Dance with me?" he said quietly. Evelyn hesitated. "I do not know how." "Then just follow my lead." He placed a hand on her back, guiding her gently across the floor. The room seemed to fade around them. For a brief moment, she forgot the cameras, the whispers, the deal. There was only the warmth of his touch and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat through his suit. When the song ended, polite applause filled the air. Lucas leaned closer. "You did well," he said. She smiled faintly. "You are not so terrible yourself." Later, as they stood near the balcony, she looked out over the glittering skyline. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" she asked. Lucas's gaze followed hers. "Pretending is what keeps my world together," he said. "If I stop, it all falls apart." She turned to him, the wind brushing her hair across her face. "Maybe it needs to fall apart so you can build something real." He looked at her, surprised by the quiet conviction in her voice. For a second, he forgot the crowd, the contract, the expectations. She did not see his fortune or his power, only the man beneath. Then a voice called his name. The spell broke. Lucas straightened, his mask sliding back into place. "We should get back inside," he said. As they re-entered the ballroom, the murmurs grew louder. Someone had leaked the news photos of them together, her name, her job. On the giant screen above the stage, headlines flashed. CEO Lucas Grant's mystery fiancé cemetery worker from Westvale Park. Evelyn froze, the blood draining from her face. The room buzzed with judgmental whispers. Cameras turned, flashes blinding. Lucas stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The music stopped. Every eye was on them. He took her hand, firm and steady, and his voice cut through the silence. "She is with me," he said coldly. The crowd stilled. The woman in the glittering gown lowered her glass. For the first time, Evelyn did not feel like the forgotten one. Under the chandelier's golden light, his hand never left hers. And though his tone was cold, his grip said something entirely different. "You are safe." The ballroom remained silent for several heartbeats after Lucas spoke. His words hung in the air like frost. "She is with me." Cameras kept flashing, but no one dared to move. Then, slowly, polite applause began to ripple through the crowd, uncertain but growing. Lucas gave a small nod and guided Evelyn toward the exit. Her hand trembled inside his, though she tried to steady it. Outside, the night air felt sharp against her skin. The valet rushed to bring the car, avoiding eye contact. When they finally slipped inside, neither spoke for several minutes. The city lights streaked across the windows, painting both their faces in gold and shadow. Evelyn broke the silence first. "You did not have to defend me," she said softly. "I did not do it for show," Lucas replied. His voice was calm but distant, as if he were still processing what had happened. They crossed a line. She looked at him, studying the hard line of his jaw. "But now everyone knows who I am. The news, the gossip columns, they will tear me apart." He turned toward her. "I will handle the press. They will not touch you." Evelyn shook her head. "You cannot control how people think. They will call me names, say I am after your money. They already believe that." Lucas's gaze softened for a brief second. Then let them believe what they want. The truth does not need to shout. Back at her apartment, he insisted on walking her to the door. When she reached for her keys, he stopped her with a quiet voice. "Evelyn," he said, "I meant what I said in there." "I know," she replied. "But tomorrow, when the articles appear, will you still mean it?" His answer came after a pause. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "Good night, Mr. Grant." "It is Lucas," he corrected gently. "Good night, Lucas." The next morning, the headlines exploded. Every website, every morning show, repeated the same story: billionaire engaged to cemetery worker. Some laughed, others speculated. Her phone filled with messages from strangers, reporters, and people she barely knew. She turned it off and went to work anyway. At Westvale Memorial Park, the quiet felt heavier than usual. She kneeled beside a grave, replacing flowers that had wilted overnight. Her mind replayed the scene at the gala again and again, his cold voice, the warmth of his hand. Nothing made sense. Around noon, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. She looked up to see Lucas walking toward her, still in his suit, tie loosened. "You should not be here," she said, startled. "I needed to see you," he said simply. "The board is furious. Investors want me to distance myself from you." "And what will you do?" she asked quietly. "I told them no," he said. "I told them the arrangement stands." Evelyn shook her head. "This was supposed to help your image, not destroy it." Lucas crouched beside her, ignoring the mud on his shoes. "Let them talk. I am tired of living for appearances. You reminded me what honesty looks like." For a moment the wind stilled. The world felt suspended between two breaths. Evelyn looked into his eyes and saw no pretense, no arrogance, only weariness and truth. "You cannot build a life on a lie," she said softly. "Then help me make it real," he answered. The words left her speechless. Somewhere deep inside, her heart stirred in a way it had not in years, but fear held her back. "This was never supposed to be real," she whispered. "Neither was the pain I feel when I see you hurt," he said. They stood in silence, surrounded by rows of names carved into stone. The air smelled of earth and rain. For the first time, Evelyn realized that the man beside her, the billionaire, the widower, the father, was just another soul trying not to be forgotten. As he turned to leave, he looked back once more. "The gala was only the beginning," he said. "Now, everyone will be watching. But I do not care. You stood beside me when you did not have to. From now on, I stand with you." The wind carried his words away, but they lingered in her chest long after he was gone. Days turned into weeks, and the world refused to forget about them. Every magazine cover carried their faces. Every talk show host speculated about their story. The billionaire and the cemetery keeper. Some called it romantic, others mocked it as a publicity stunt. Evelyn stopped reading the headlines altogether. She buried herself in work at the memorial park, letting silence shield her. Lucas, however, did not retreat. He visited the park often, no longer hiding behind tinted windows or bodyguards. He would bring fresh flowers for his late wife's grave, sometimes helping Evelyn carry water or trim the grass. The first few times, she told him he did not need to, but he kept coming anyway. One afternoon, while they stood beside the marble angel, she asked quietly, "Does it bother you to be seen here with me?" He shook his head. "For once, people are seeing me where I actually want to be. That feels new." She smiled faintly. "You mean, among the quiet?" "Among what is honest," he corrected. Their routine became something neither expected. He would arrive after his meetings, loosen his tie, and roll up his sleeves while she worked. Sometimes they did not speak at all. Other times he would tell her about his son Nathan, who had stopped playing piano after his mother died. Evelyn listened, her voice always gentle when she replied. "Children stop playing when they no longer believe anyone is listening," she said. Lucas looked at her, something thoughtful in his eyes. "Would you come by the house someday? Nathan could use someone who listens." She hesitated, unsure if she was ready to step into his world beyond the contract, but his tone was not commanding, it was almost hopeful. "If it would help him," she said finally, "I will come." The next weekend, she did. The Grant residence was nothing like she imagined. It was vast but quiet. Every hallway echoing with the absence of laughter. Nathan was shy at first, hiding behind a stack of books. But when Evelyn knelt beside him and asked about his favorite music, his eyes lit up. Soon he was showing her the piano in the corner of the living room, covered in dust. "Your father says you used to play," she said. He shrugged. "It sounds empty now." She pressed one key softly. The note lingered in the air like a question. "Maybe it is waiting for you to fill it again." By the end of the evening, Nathan played a few hesitant chords. Lucas watched from the doorway, the faintest smile on his face. Later, when Evelyn prepared to leave, he walked her to the gate. "You have a strange effect on people," he said. "Even my son listens to you." "I think he just needed permission to feel again," she replied. "Sometimes adults need that too." He looked at her, the porch light drawing warmth into his usually cold eyes. "You make it sound so simple." "It is not simple," she said softly, "but it is possible." The contract's final week approached, yet neither mentioned it. The tension that had once felt forced now carried an undercurrent of something real. She noticed the way his gaze lingered longer, the way his voice softened when he said her name. On the last day of the agreement, Lucas invited her to a private dinner at the same hotel where their first gala had taken place. The restaurant was empty except for them. Candles flickered between them on the table. He raised a glass. "To 2 weeks that changed everything," he said. Evelyn met his gaze, her chest tightening. "And to promises that end tonight," she answered. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes, tonight." When the meal ended, he handed her a sealed envelope. "The donation for your father's care and the Memory Garden Fund," he said, as agreed. She took it, her fingers trembling. "Thank you, Lucas." He stood, his voice low. "Goodbye, Evelyn." She tried to smile, but the word goodbye felt heavier than she expected. As she walked out into the rain, she realized that some contracts end on paper but continue quietly inside the heart. The next morning, Evelyn woke to a quiet apartment and the sound of rain against the window. The envelope lay on her table, untouched. She should have felt relief the contract was over, her father's medical bills were paid, and her dream of the memory garden finally had funding. But instead of peace, there was only an ache she could not name. She dressed and went to the memorial park as she always did. The air smelled of wet grass and stone. She moved from one grave to another, her hands working automatically. But her mind kept drifting back to him. Every word, every look, every moment from the past 2 weeks replayed like a film she could not stop watching. When she finished for the day, she walked to the empty plot she had reserved for the future memory garden. It was quiet there, just a patch of soil waiting for life to grow. She knelt down and planted a few seeds from the small packet she carried in her coat. Forget-me-nots, the same kind she had once placed on his wife's grave. "For the ones we lose," she whispered, "and the ones who come back." That evening, the television in the caretaker's office flickered with breaking news. A reporter's voice filled the room. Grant Industries faces a major shareholder backlash following the CEO's recent public scandal. Sources say Mr. Grant has resigned temporarily and transferred several $1 million into a personal foundation dedicated to community restoration projects. Evelyn stared at the screen, disbelief flooding her. Lucas had stepped down. Before she could think further, her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. "Please come to the Memory Garden site tomorrow morning. I need to see you. LG." She did not sleep that night. The next morning, the clouds parted just enough to let pale sunlight fall over the park. When she arrived, she saw him standing there, no suit, no entourage, just Lucas, holding a small bouquet of forget-me-nots. "You should not be here," she said softly. "The reporters will find you." "Let them," he answered. "I am done hiding." She looked at him, eyes wide. "You left your company." "I had to," he said. "They wanted me to apologize for you, to pretend this was all a mistake. But it was not." Evelyn shook her head, overwhelmed. "You did not have to do that. I never asked for—" "I know you did not," he interrupted. "That is why I did." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind brushed through the trees, scattering petals from the few early blooms. "I built everything I have by controlling what people see," he continued. "But you made me remember what it feels like to be seen for real." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Lucas, this was supposed to end. You do not owe me anything." He took a step closer. "You are right. I do not owe you. But I want you in my life anyway." Her eyes filled with tears. "What about your reputation?" He gave a quiet laugh. "Reputation is just noise. You taught me silence can say more." He handed her the bouquet. "For the memory garden," he said. "And for us, if you will let it grow." She took the flowers with shaking hands. The blue petals gleamed like tiny pieces of sky. For the first time, Evelyn did not feel like someone who tended to the forgotten. She felt remembered. And standing there, among the graves and sunlight, she realized that the line between contract and connection had quietly disappeared. A month later, the first blossoms appeared in the memory garden. Rows of forget-me-nots stretched across the field like a river of blue light, swaying gently under the spring breeze. Evelyn stood among them, her hands dusted with soil, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The foundation Lucas had promised was real now. The Grant Memorial Initiative funded spaces for families who had lost loved ones, giving them somewhere to grieve with dignity. What had begun as a contract between two strangers had quietly turned into something living, something kind. Lucas arrived that afternoon, dressed simply in a white shirt and rolled sleeves. He had traded the corporate boardroom for a notebook full of sketches and community plans. When Evelyn saw him walking up the gravel path, she smiled. "You came back," she said. "I never left," he answered. "Not really." He handed her a folder. Inside was a document stamped with the city's seal. The council approved full development for the memory garden. It will be your project now, completely under your name. Her eyes widened. "Mine?" He nodded. "You earned it. The people remember what you stood for. They needed someone who reminded them that compassion still matters." Evelyn looked down at the paper, then at him. "You gave up everything you built for this." "I did not give it up," he said quietly. "I just changed what I was building." They walked through the garden together, the gravel crunching beneath their feet. Near the center, Lucas stopped and placed a small plaque into the ground. The inscription read, "For those who loved and were forgotten." Evelyn touched the words with her fingertips. "It feels right," she whispered. He looked at her, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "You once said you were afraid of people forgetting the living. I think you have made sure none of us ever will." She turned toward him, the sunlight warming her face. "And what about you, Lucas? What will you do now?" He smiled faintly. "I am learning to live without a contract." A quiet laugh escaped her. "That is dangerous." "Maybe," he said. "But it feels honest." They stood in silence, surrounded by flowers that seemed to stretch endlessly toward the horizon. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring box, not the one from the contract, but a new one, simple and unadorned. He opened it. No signatures, no conditions, he said. Just a promise that is real. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. You do not need to do this. I want to, he replied. Because this time, it is not about appearances. It is about us. The wind stirred again, scattering blue petals at their feet. Evelyn nodded slowly, unable to speak. Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch steady and warm. Around them, the garden shimmered in the fading light, a place born from loss, now blooming with something stronger than memory. Something alive. 1 year later, the memory garden had become more than a field of flowers. It was a place where people came to remember, to heal, and to start again. Children played near the fountains, families left letters by the stone benches, and visitors walked the winding paths in silence. Evelyn stood near the entrance, greeting everyone with her familiar calm smile. Her name was now engraved on the dedication plaque beside the gate. Director, Evelyn Hart. Every morning, she placed a single bouquet of forget-me-nots near the same spot where Lucas had first handed her the flowers. It was her quiet ritual, a reminder of how far both of them had come. That afternoon, a familiar car pulled up near the entrance. Lucas stepped out, holding his son Nathan's hand. The boy ran toward her, waving. Miss Evelyn, the garden looks beautiful. She laughed softly. Thank you, Nathan. But it belongs to all of us now. Lucas walked up beside them, smiling. He looked different, still confident, but lighter, freer. The board has stopped calling, he said. It turns out life goes on, even without control. Evelyn smiled. You seem happier. I am, he admitted. For once, I am where I want to be. They walked together through the rows of flowers. The sunlight broke through the clouds, catching on the blue petals like drops of sky. Near the center stood a stone statue of an angel, Nathan's idea, holding a wreath of forget-me-nots. As they reached the statue, a small crowd gathered. Today marked the first anniversary of the garden's opening. Reporters, families, and local officials waited for Lucas to speak. He took the microphone, his voice steady but warm. 1 year ago, this place was only an idea, he said. It began with one person who refused to let the forgotten disappear. Evelyn Hart taught me that leadership is not power, it is compassion in action. And she taught me that love is not about being seen, but about seeing someone for who they truly are. The crowd applauded softly. Lucas turned to Evelyn, his gaze unwavering. And now, he continued, there is something I have wanted to say in front of everyone since that night. He took her hand, his words echoing across the garden. She is with me, he said, not coldly this time, but with quiet pride and tenderness. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause. Evelyn's eyes glistened as tears spilled down her cheeks. She looked at him and whispered, For real this time? For real, he said. As the music swelled and the wind scattered petals around them, Evelyn leaned against him, her hand resting over his heart. Around them, the memory garden shimmered in the golden light, proof that even from loss, something beautiful could bloom. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, his voice came once more, gentle but sure. She is with me, always.